Hi, I'm Emily Jane.
Hi, I'm Sylvana Munn.
Desiree Paulings.
John Smith.
Sure, you have to do yourself.
But there's 4. I'm
Sorry,
Serena
redo.
Kelley.
No, it's fine.
Redo. Are you guys editing this?
No.
You should go should.
Justin.
Okay. Alright. Hello, I'm Justin Kelley from Alice Springs, Australia. Let's say you have a fever. You go to your local doctor for treatment. Your doctor diagnoses you with X. Then your doctor, being a good doctor, compares all of the available prescriptions to treat X and chooses the most effective prescription based off of all the studies available to him. Now that prescription has a life cycle. It starts out as an idea to treat X. Then a bunch of really smart scientists, they get together and they develop a drug. That drug is tested, studied, and then subsequently marketed based off the results of those studies. The drug was ultimately marketed to your doctor, who then felt he was making an educated decision when he prescribed you that drug. However, what your doctor may not have known is that it's not uncommon for negative study results to go unpublished, and your doctor becomes a victim of publication bias, which is what I'm going to inform you of today. We'll cover a few things. We're going to define bias for the purpose of this speech. Then I'm going to ask, why would anybody withhold negative publication? We'll then cover how positive studies are far more likely to be published than negative studies. We'll go over a few contrary arguments, and then I'll wrap up with my conclusion. To establish a playing ground, publication bias, as defined by Dr. John Iotis in his article, Why Most Published Research Findings Are False, in the PLOS Medicine Journal, is the combination of various design, data analysis, and presentation factors that tend to produce research findings when they should not be produced. Now that we're on the same page when discussing publication bias, let's discuss why you would withhold publication. In his speech, What Doctors Don't Know About the Drugs They Prescribe, Dr. Ben Goldacre discusses why withholding negative studies is far more lucrative financially. For example, a recent review of all the FDA-approved studies done on antidepressants in a 15-year period showed that there had been 38 studies that had proved that antidepressants were effective. And there were 36 studies that proved that antidepressants were not effective when compared against a placebo. So roughly 50-50. But when we compare those studies against what was actually published, we find that 37 of the 38 positive studies were published, while only 3 of the 36 negative studies were published. So of course, when marketing a new drug, a doctor may be more likely to prescribe a product that has been shown through academic research to be extremely efficient, when in reality, he doesn't know. It is also currently very easy to exclude negative publication. Although there are academic organizations who have tried to hold the line and said, no, we will not publish studies unless all peer-reviewed or all pre-established studies will be published. But no one has stuck to their guns. In addition, consumers like you and me rely on our doctors to inform us about drugs that are being prescribed to us. And as a consequence, these companies are not being held accountable by their consumers. If by chance you weren't doing the math for my previous example, a review in the Cochrane database of systematic reviews found that positive studies are at least 4 times more likely to be published than negative studies. In his speech, Dr. Goldacre explains how in March 2012, researchers in the journal Nature had tried to replicate 53 published cancer treatment techniques. Out of the 53, they were only able to replicate 6. To steal a direct line from Dr. Goldacre, this is a cancer of the core of evidence-based medicine. But I don't want to be guilty of the same bias that I'm accusing others of taking up. And not all members of the scientific community feel that this is an issue. In a 2004 article by the BBC titled Negative Drug Research Withheld, an editor's response from Deborah Glover, the editor of the Journal of Wound Care, dismissed the idea of publication bias by saying that individuals may be confusing academic journals with tabloid magazines. A way of information, let's quickly rehash what I've covered. First, we define bias for the purpose of this speech. Then we discuss how withholding data results can be very lucrative financially. Easy to do, and academic researchers are often not held accountable for their actions. Then, I said that positive studies are at least 4 times more likely to be published than negative studies. Then, I wrapped up by discussing a response from an academic journal who didn't quite agree. Again, I'm Justin Kelley. I hope that I've informed you today about the ongoing issue of publication bias in the medical community, and I'm open to questions. Any questions?
Do you think that if they did put out the negative and the positives, that a lot of doctors would then, there'd be a lot less drugs on the market? Do you think that'd be effective?
I believe so. I didn't have time to put it in there, but that Dr. Ben Goldacre that I was mentioning, I pulled a lot of my material from his lecture he gave, and he gave an example of this drug called reboxetine, and he prescribed it because initially he had all these study material that said that it was more effective than what was previously on the market for antidepressants. And the patient he had, none of the real prescriptions he'd been getting were effective, so he was kind of as with saying, and said, okay, well this says it's effective, so he issued it. He found out later that it's actually caused negative side effects. It would increase this sort of depression within him. So there were a couple of other instances he gave where back in the 80s they had developed this drug and they tested it. It was to people who have a heart attack. They would give it to them to help stop your abnormal heart rhythm. And so they tested it back in the 80s and they found that against placebo, people were actually very likely to die from it. It would actually cause heart failure and death.
Wow.
So they didn't publish. They said, oh, it's a failure, so they didn't publish it. Then about 10 years later, they decided to try it. Another company had the same idea, tried it, but didn't stop at the study level. And they just said they thought it was a fluke. They had this sort of publication bias, said, no, it's effective. So I think he said several thousand people died unnecessarily because that drug was on the market.
That's crazy. So, okay. That answers my question.
So you good? Okay. You probably have it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.